Okay. Well, I'm surprised to learn that I must speak in English. What a disaster. Shows where the world is going. And I have nevertheless come here to talk about France, because France is not just a territory, it is an idea. And therefore, quite apart from the agreements that politicians may make, the ideas can flourish and can live in the air and then can do something useful. And the hope that I have in coming here is that I am going to get you to help me. In other words, the awful thing about most events is that nothing happens afterwards. So how can we do something, because we live in such difficult times, such mad times perhaps, that we need to discover new ways of thinking. And to me that means finding ways of thinking about remembering the past in a different way. Because we have seen the past hitherto as something which follows us and lives with us and dominates us. But in fact we can do something with the past to extract from it what humans have tried to do and to realize that they have failed over and over again. But we can learn from their mistakes, and we can therefore do something better, and therefore find a new way of imagining the future based on past experience instead of ideology or utopia or whatever. And I am very grateful to the French, from whom I have benefited enormously simply by being among them, simply by having studied them. They have encouraged me to think, and to think in ways which are not usual. And I want to see whether you are interested by some exploration of the art of thinking. I think that you are all bilingual. Now this is something extraordinary, because in this country 68% of the population cannot speak a foreign language. Even those who have university or higher education, 48% only can still not speak a foreign language. What happens to you if you cannot speak a foreign language? Well, we have studies of bilingualism which shows that it does make a change to your brain. It enables you to think in a different way, and enables you to think in different ways, in various different ways. And talking in French, even if one doesn't talk it perfectly, is an exercise in which one can develop the same joy which Federer finds in tennis. So now you understand why we are in the mess we are. How can you expect people who have never spoken a foreign language to find any sympathy with Europe, which speaks many different languages? How can you understand their insistence that this is the best country in the world, when in the Nordic countries and in the Baltic countries, 9 out of 10 people speak at least one foreign language, and usually several? We are very backward in this. And so the first thing we've got to do is, what can we do about it? And so I come here with a desire to say, au secours, help us, we've got to do something, we're sinking. And what should we do? Well, this is what I have tried to get into the heads of ambassadors ever since I've been meeting them, and they won't listen to me. So perhaps you will listen to me. I think the French should be solving 2 problems. Not only the problem of, you might say, the inability to converse with others, to put themselves into the shoes of other people, but also to treat something else which I'll come to. First of all, the French are great experts in the education of the very young, in infant schools, the maternelle. And I think they should come and colonize England with maternelles. Now this is a very financially workable proposition, in the sense that nothing is more a burden to English parents, particularly parents with 2 jobs. The cost of bringing up young children is enormous, and it is impossible. And French schools can do something, can create a miracle, because first of all, when infants can learn languages extremely easily, much better than their elders, and I would say that to make this work well, the French should not simply teach French, they should teach several languages. And you know, if you get people to learn foreign languages when they're young, then they feel at home in other places and they become more skilled at learning other languages. So, will you help me in that? Question 1. Okay, and in that way you are helping the British people, the parents, to deal with their children without this terrible sacrifice of a wife going out to work and giving all her salary to a minder. Well, the second question on which I put to you is that we're now in at the end of an era of history. For 300 years we have believed in revolutions. We have had an agricultural revolution, an industrial revolution, and a revolution in our population. We have had an explosion of the number of people who lived here. In Shakespeare's time, there were only 3 million people here. It must have been a very interesting place. And we have thought, as a result of all these great achievements, that we are always on the road to progress and to prosperity. And we've discovered that each of those wonderful skills that we have developed in the past 300 years are in fact bad for us. It is like the end of Communist Party rule. Suddenly we discover it doesn't work. And we've discovered that it doesn't work to farm in the way we have farmed. We've killed the soil. It doesn't work to have industry which employs people in jobs they hate and pollutes the cities, and urbanization has brought everybody, so many people into the cities, so many to such an extent that quite soon we expect 75% of the world to be living in great cities. So look what's happened. We've got the empty land to look at, and we've got to resuscitate it. We've got to reinvent a way of farming, reinvent a way of creating the objects which now at the moment dominate our lives into forcing us to buy things all the time, because if we don't buy them, there'll be nothing for other people to do. So we've got to reinvent work. And so it is an exciting period to be. So instead of moaning about this and getting angry about Brexit, which I was very angry, but I now saw it as a stimulus to us to deal with the really big problems and the crisis of survival and the incomplete achievements of women and the frustrations of young people who've been defeated in elections more and more and who don't represent the policies which are now being implemented. So we've got to do something about this, and that makes one think, what can we do? And my answer is, that let governments go on doing what they want. And in that case, without whether they're going to go on doing that, whatever we think. But what can you do? And I have devoted myself for some years now to encouraging people to develop a new kind of conversation. Madame the ambassadrice has said we must converse, but what must we converse about? And I have therefore invented a menu of conversation to make you talk about the things that are really important in your lives, as opposed to gossiping and doing all the amusing things that you do when you talk. And in 15 countries, I have got people to reveal that when they are made to talk like this about subjects which matter to them, they feel amazed. Why have we never talked about these things? Why is it so difficult to find time to talk? And I require them to talk for at least 2 hours. And they say, I can't talk for 2 hours with one person, it's impossible. No, one-to-one, and you form an understanding with another person. And so while other people devote themselves to introducing laws to get people to behave better and to work harder and to make more money, I think it is now in private life, which is what people care about more and more. It is their family and friends which matter most to them. In private life, as I say, in personal relations, in relationships, building relationships, creating a family of friends from all countries is what is open to us now. And I get enormous number of emails all the time from people all over the world. I got one this morning from Ghana. I am 24 years old, I would like to organize conversations in Ghana. I get letters from extraordinary places like Azerbaijan, for God's sake. Why are they writing me from there? Because it is a universal problem that people are isolated increasingly by their specialization. You go to university or you go to some training place and you are taught to become a narrow specialist in one thing and expected to go on doing that for the whole of your life. And you're isolated also by your education, which is different. You're isolated in where you live. There are all sorts of things which limit people's lives now. And therefore, I would like your help in organizing more of these and bringing people together. I have succeeded even in bringing Turks and Armenians together. And they have liked it because I have stopped them talking about the same old things and talked about what everybody needs to do is, what shall I do with my life? So, this is my second proposal to you, and I think it is a proposal which is relevant to the European Union's future. The great mistake which was made by the leaders of Europe was to think that all that required was the homogenization of laws and regulations and so on. And they forgot that in order to have a political entity, an economic entity, people have got to love it. Now with nations, they didn't forget that. And they so invented all sorts of myths about how their country was wonderful and had been the best country in the world forever, and how the king was wonderful, and how we all agreed about our values. And but if I ask you now, if you're foreign and you want to become British, you've got to pass an examination which you will say, do you believe in British values? What the hell are British values which are different from anybody else's values? To be nice to everybody, to be fair play, that sort of thing. Well, you've got to play the game and say the right thing. So I was pleased that this is not something which no one in government might approve of, because I was interested to know that when I met the President of France some years ago, and we talked about all sorts of things, he got an idea of what I was doing. And when he went to the Congress, he made a speech in the Congress in the USA, he said, democracy is based on the daily conversations and mutual understanding of people. Democracy is based on conversations. It hasn't been thought of before. And it is only by one-to-one that one can build people feeling that I am not your enemy. You may be different from me in many ways, but you're interesting, and I understand why you feel the way you do. And I know that you've been bashed up in all sorts of ways, and I understand your anger and so on. And we can only do it one by one. We cannot do it by laws. So will you help me with that? And the third question I want to put to you is, the Brexit was voted in the referendum, 52-48, but if you look at it more carefully, it was won by only 1/3 of the electorate. We're ruled by a minority. And the people who have lost most of all are, of course, the young. And the young are interested in going and traveling abroad and not being stopped by policemen just because they've got the wrong passport and so on. And what are we going to do about the young? And all the old people who have engineered this break with Europe, they are dying fast. Every year, 500,000 of them die. In fact, between 2016 and now, about 2 million have gone. In other words, if we had the referendum now, it might have been different, except for the obstinacy of people who, having voted leave, feel it is an insult to them that the politicians don't obey them. What are politicians for? Are they there simply to do what people who don't know what leaving the union means tell them to do? Or are they there to bring wisdom and to be each of them capable of standing independently of whatever their party says? And so I want you to think about what we can do about the future of young people. And unless we do something, they are going to feel more and more dissatisfied with the kind of jobs we invented for them in the last few centuries, which is to have a career in a specialized job and to sit in front of a computer and to be a manager. The best thing that can happen to you is to become a manager and no longer to use your speciality, but to push people around and annoy everyone else. The jobs we have invented can be reinvented. And we've got to invent jobs because ultimately work is where you spend most of your life. And most of the days of your life, with the hope that you can get away at the end of it, but except at the end of it you are so exhausted there's nothing much you can do. It is very important that a French court recently declared the habits of the methods of businesses in making work more stressful and demanding people should work harder and harder for longer and longer hours was against the rights of human rights. It's the first time this has happened. And if it is against human rights, well, it's time we did something about it. But of course, nothing will be done about it unless we do it. Therefore, I appeal to you, all of you, who must be involved in jobs of different kinds. I presume you're not all lazy people who've got nothing to do in the afternoon. What can your particular activity do to participate in experimental work? I'm not saying we should ask people to change. I am saying only that every business, every institution should have a research and development part which like the pharmaceuticals, tries out different remedies for our problems and gets young people to try them out and let us see whether it works. Of course, it will not work very well many times, but sometimes it might. You know, electric light took about 10,000 attempts before it was invented. But this is something we can do. And so this is what, while governments argue about, you know, whether they're going to be more jobs for customs officers to stand at Dover and stop people getting into England, what can ordinary people do? And so I conclude that what I'm saying to you is it's in interpersonal relations that we can start things going. We don't convince people, we convince one person. We share ideas with one person. I believe in the couple as being the new force. Not just the collective, not just the lonely individual, but the couple. And by couple I don't mean just a person, two people who live together. I mean people who sympathize with each other, who get to know each other. I mean friends, people one understands, and one can have many different couples of the mind. Well, there you are. I've told you what I think, and I hope this event of the Night of Ideas enables you in the morning to think that you're going to do something useful in the daytime as well as at night. And so good luck to you. Thank you for inviting me. I expected to speak in French, but perhaps you would not have understood my French. So perhaps you have not understood my English either. Well, thank you all the same. Okay.